Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you'd like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you'll read my comic books on an online digital archive, get access to a Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share tips, feedback, process, works in progress, and just general shop talk. You can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI and sign up. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, blog posts of work in progress animated GIFs, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you can head on over to amazon.jeremy.net. That'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can also pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8, the conclusion to the series. Both volumes have extensive back matter, script excerpts, thumbnails, page layouts, photo reference. I basically show you how I put the whole comic book together. You can check out all those at amazon.jeremy.net. On the homepage of my YouTube channel, there are book flip-through videos. You can actually see what's inside the book before you pick it up. And there's links to all of these in the description of the video. And if you're watching on Twitch, there will be links in the there will be a link tree in the About tab. So, with that said, I am continuing work on this Gorgon enthroned piece. I have a little piece of reference I pulled so I can help. What I've been doing at this stage is going through and refining all of the different statues that surround Medusa. So the Mercury statue, excuse me, pardon me. I went through and I've redrawn the Apollo with the lyre multiple times. Ares, there in the back with his sword. Hades, just looking generally grumpy with snakes coiling around his throat. Athena on one side, Demeter on the other, and Poseidon in the foreground. So that is the reference that I pulled up is just from a statue of Poseidon. So I can kind of come in here and just try to make his beard more flowy, finish him like as a character, just make him feel a little bit, more richer. Let's see here. Amaris is in the chat. Said been gone, was spending time with my partner. Well, you know what? Spending quality time with your partner is extremely important. I know that my wife very much appreciates when I spend quality time with her, and I appreciate when she spends quality time with me. So that is a good thing. Besides, there's always, these live streams are always archived, and they are there anytime you want to go back and miss any episodes you miss. So drawing facial hair, as far as I'm concerned, it's the same as drawing hair on the top of your head, in that you're trying to find ways to make these masses feel like they flow together well, that they conform to the structure of the head, but still kind of have a nice rhythm, flowing rhythm of their own. So a lot of this is really just trying to make sure I don't create forms that are duplicating too much. Like if I look at the size of this piece of hair up here versus this piece of the hair versus this piece, there's little differences, but they're a little too similar. So I kind of need to decide. I need to make one of them smaller. And usually the easiest way is to make whichever one is in the middle, the small one, so that the two larger ones the two larger ones could actually, be almost the same. But for instance, if I had this is the largest one, and then this one's smaller, and then that's smaller, that works, but it also tends to give a little bit of a dit, 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 like it's almost too rhythmic. If you just go from bigger to smaller. So it's almost like going from big to small to medium, or small to big to medium, just kind of changing it around. That helps. Let's see here. James is in the chat. How you doing, James? He says, I'm trying to get better with hair. And he says, yeah, but there is a flow. So let's see here. Oh, and Amara says, her partner says, he asked the big question. So I've been pretty much on cloud 9 since coming back from vacation with him. Well, congratulations to you, and happy nuptials. Very glad to hear it. Let's see here. So I guess I just need to figure out. I mean, a lot of this it's trial and error in the sense that I can identify, even if I have a good sense of what the problem is, it's like I have to work through my internal list of, well, try this solution. Well, try this solution. It's like having a checklist. You know what? It's exactly like troubleshooting a piece of software or hardware in your house when something's not working, and they say, like if your router isn't working for your computer, your Wi-Fi is down, they're like, try this, then try this, then try this. If your printer's jammed, it says go through these steps. If that doesn't work, try this thing. That is what a lot of these types of revisions are. So it's not quite drawing by instinct, but it's not quite it's a little bit drawn by the seat of your pants, but it's also a little bit of running down a checklist. Because if I just knew exactly what the right solution was, I would just try that, and I wouldn't even try it. I would just make the change, and it'd be done. Like this already feels better by making the lower piece of his face smaller. Now, the other thing I'm also thinking is it's a little distracting. The shadow that I have in the front, yeah, that actually, even though it helps frame the entire piece to have these extra bits of tone and value in there, for drawing this piece, they're kind of distracting. And I think that what I'm going to have to do is when I get done with this stage, I'm going to have to duplicate this entire file so I can leave this file as it is, but in the new file, merge a bunch of layers so I can do my cleanup and do a color pass. So we shall see. We shall see. We shall see. We shall see. All right. But yeah, I wanted to get rid of or remove, just turn off that layer with the tone so that it would be a little bit less distracting from these changes and corrections I'm making to his hair, his beard, flowing and running across his face. And the other thing that I need to keep in mind and remind myself is that these are supposed to be statues, because it is very possible for me to get so caught up in the flowingness of this. And if you look at artists like the Italian sculptor Bernini, he did do sculptures that looked amazingly lifelike. He could do cloth and skin that look like you could just reach out and touch it and it would be soft. I have to remember that I kind of want these to come off as a little bit more stony. So I need to be careful not to get too detailed in how much I'm refining these different aspects, hair, facial features. Like for instance, leaving the eyes without pupils. So for all of them, they have that statue kind of, stoned eye. And I left eyes completely out of Mars, or not Mars, Aries, because I think that for the most part, I really just want it to be shadow going inside, like you can see a little bit of a mouth, and I made cheat it so you can see a little bit of his teeth, like he's snarling. But I want most of his face to actually be in shadow, and I'm just leaving empty space in there so that I can have specks of light suggesting any facial features inside of there. Hey, Byron is in the chat. How you doing, Byron? Thanks for rolling in. Just chugging along here. At this point, it's a lot of detail and cleanup work. And I haven't even really gotten to the cleanup stage because all of these are pretty scratchy and loose. I would say that I sort of drew this particular statue, which for now I'm referring to as Demeter. She probably has the cleanest lines of all of these, but usually I would go through and do a stage where basically like digital inking, where I would clean this up even more than what I've got it here. I'm also wondering really how much I should be trying to work quickly. Because again, this is personal work. I don't have a deadline per se, but the faster I work, the more pieces I can produce. The thing about it is that I find that I genuinely enjoy taking my time and kind of picking my way through a given piece. The process of making work and trying to crank it out just to be as fast as possible, I understand the value of it from a business sense in terms of like selling prints and selling pieces. The more pieces you're generating, the more income you're generating. But the actual act of drawing is something that I enjoy doing slowly. I mean, I found even in figure drawing class, my figure drawings tend to be underdeveloped, and I have to come back after class and do what I'm doing here. I mean, that you've seen me do those fixing bad figure drawings videos. That's me just going through and taking what is a very rough, sketchy drawing, exactly the way I would do if I were doing a comic or any other illustration like this, and just refining them, working out where the anatomy really should be, fixing whatever drawing mistakes I've made. But I figure, if I don't enjoy the process, it's like, why bother doing it? If it's just work, then, why not go, I don't know, invest in mutual funds and, read up on the stock market, do something that'll generate more funds quicker. So I'm left with this. No one's existentially demanding that I answer this question, but I think about these kind of things in terms of what is the relationship between productivity and creativity. And I do believe that by producing more work, a larger body of work, I'll get better faster. But I haven't been really pushing myself to crank out a lot of work faster because I find this process that I'm doing, where I'm just sitting here and refining, sculpting, and adjusting, this is the most soothing thing in my day-to-day existence. is just sitting here and saying, all right, let me move this over here. No, does that look right? Nah, not quite. Let me adjust that. Let's see here. Byron says, in this economy, even those aren't guaranteed to turn a profit, so might as well have some fun. Word. I think that is where I tend to fall on that question. But I also think that it is very good for people to question, to interrogate their own whatever ideals that they hold true. Like if I'm like thinking make art because I enjoy it, because there's no guarantee I'm going to make money from it anyway. Even though that is what I believe, I think it is worthwhile to question those ideas, at least to myself. And so me bringing it up as a topic of conversation is more about, you know, what I always try to do, which is just sharing what the internal monologue is as I'm making things, you know, just sharing the kind of things that are running through my mind while I make stuff. Yeah. I think I've done a video before that I titled Creativity versus Productivity. So if I use that for the title for this live stream, you guys will have to pardon me, and we'll see. Well, you know, I can just do a search in my channel. At a certain point, I've done so many videos that there's going to be overlaps and reuses of certain ideas. I don't want to just duplicate titles that I've done before, but you know, obviously every topic I talk about, I've brought up at least once before. I think it's been a long time since I've done a live stream where I'm like, brand new topic. Here's something I've never talked about. I don't think I've done that for years. I'm zoomed in a bit too much. Zoom out a little bit more. As a matter of fact, I feel like I need to just erase this cheekbone and just give it another try. It's a little bit better. Yeah, let me flip this canvas. I like how it flipped it and it kept the fact that I've got the canvas skewed at an angle. I don't know if Photoshop would do that. Bring his ear down a little bit more. I'm still not happy with his nose. Now this is one of those where I need to keep forcing myself to zoom out and zoom out and zoom out, because I think all of these little details of the hair are getting to be too much. Like I'm getting too much into drawing the individual strands and not just getting the mass of the hair, because that's all this piece really needs. Like as a stone sculpture, all it would need. But even if wasn't stone, if I was just doing a, you know, if this was, I mean, I am doing a painting, but if I were doing a painting of a figure as opposed to a figure that's supposed to be made out of stone, I think that a lot of these little strands that could all be indicated with color or tone other than the black, the strong black outline that I'm using. Pardon me. Oh, banged my knee against the drafting table. Let's see here. Byron says, to be fair, you're also older and more experienced now. The refinement of an idea is just as valuable, if not more so, than the originating of one. Yes, I completely agree with that. I think that's probably the reason why I approach the way I do. But I think what I was sort of musing about is the concept that learning to refine your work can go quicker just by making a lot of work. I'm sure you've heard that whole idea of that class, the pottery class, where one group of students was told that they were going to be judged on quality, and then one group was told they were going to be judged on quantity, and they were like pottery; they were just making pots. And so they were given, I don't know how long, a week, 2 weeks, whole semester. And what happened was the students that were based on quality, they may have made just a handful of pots, and they were graded and they did an okay job. But the students that made like a ton ended up making like 30, 40, like whatever it was, like 3 or 4 times the amount of work that the other students did, the students that were judged on quality. And it turned out that those students who were judged on quantity also produced the highest quality, because through the iteration, the act of making multiple versions, they produced, they learned more, they learned faster, made a lot of mistakes, made a lot of crappy pots. But when you looked at the overall body, the best pieces from the body of the work, they over the final results was also some of the best work in the class. And I have gone through periods where I draw faster. I've gone through periods where I draw slower. I draw slower now than I have ever drawn in my life. And the reason for that is not intentional. It's purely because the more I learn, the more mistakes I see. And the more mistakes I see, the more I try to fix them. And that leads me to this phase where I'm going, much slower now, and I'm much more thoughtful about all the marks that I make. Because I do have a hard time enjoying my work when I look at here's the thing. I enjoy the process a lot more than I enjoy the finished piece. But I do find that I have a very difficult time enjoying the finished piece if I look at it and it's just, there's so many mistakes that I could have fixed if I just took some time. So I think that's the thing, is I want to have at least something to enjoy. And the fixing process, I enjoy this. I don't know how much I would fix. Like I've done a little bit of speed painting, but I've never really sat down and said, all right, I'm just gonna make it my goal to produce a quote unquote fit. That's the thing. It's the finishing. I don't know how to finish quickly. I know how to thumbnail quickly. I know how to lay out quickly. I know how to work on anatomy quickly. But the finishing, to me, the whole nature of the finishing process is reflection and refinement. You have to kind of take your time and view and judge, and all of the other things come from the gut. All of the other steps, in terms of like, you can just just fire them off and see how it comes. But I feel like the finishing of a piece requires patience. And that's something that I told you I question my beliefs frequently. That's one of the ideas that I am willing to interrogate. I'm willing to interrogate whether finishing has to be a slow process, or can I learn enough to do it and do that with the same level of vigor and intensity that I would do with other phases of making art. I'm always willing to say, well, maybe what I believe isn't the truth. The the truth in the Greek philosophical sense, a a objective truth. Let's see here. Byron also says, same. The final rendering stage is an absolute fog of back and forth for me. It takes ages. Yeah. Well, that's one of the things, like just the whole thread conversationally of interrogating the ideas that we believe and hold true. I wonder whether I can get to a point where that finishing rendering stage, like I think that for every once in a while, all of us get that point where we do a piece where it seems like it just falls out of the sky for us, and it just like it almost feels like magic, like it just comes together, and you're like, oh my god, if only every piece could be this easy. And what I'm wondering is if I create enough art and if I create it fast enough, if that process can actually become easier, or it's always the same level of difficulty, but I gain the ability to do a difficult thing faster. And let me be clear that doing something difficult quickly or doing something difficult and not making it look difficult is not the same as it being easy. It absolutely is not. Because a lot of times people will look at artists that are very, that's why you have that whole story of Picasso selling a sketch on a napkin and charging somebody like $1,000 for it, and they're saying that took you 5 minutes, and he says, no, it took me 40 years, because it took all of the time and skill of his lifetime of creative experience to be able to do something that, even if it's to do something that in just to do a finished piece in 5 minutes, even if it's just a sketch, it takes a lifetime to develop that level of skill. And that brings me back to that concept of doing so many works, that because I think that's the challenge. I'm sort of beating around the bush and going around in circles here, is the idea that while I believe it is true that the volume of work you do can allow you to produce finished works faster, I believe it, but I haven't been living it. I haven't been experimenting it. I haven't been trying it, because I'm still so busy just trying to be better at the fundamentals, the basic draftsmanship, the basic values of light and dark. Basic anatomy, basic tone. I mean, color is a whole beast unto itself, and there's a reason why I tend to do black and white or monochromatic pieces. It's just I know that color. Well, this way, I say color is not my strong suit, but that again may just be a story that I'm telling myself. All right, I think I can live with this Poseidon. Armpits are always tricky because I'm trying to get that the lats going into the armpit because they come from the back but cross over sort of up underneath the deltoid. And this overlapping of muscles is challenging to depict well. It's like the armpit doesn't want to be bothered. The armpit's like, stop trying to look at all my business. So we got muscles over here to cover where things attach. You don't need to see what's going on in here. The armpit's like, mind your business. Guy from Red Bank says, put some hair then. You know what? And that's actually a really good point because Poseidon is a hairy ass dude. He should totally have hairy armpits. Because it's a statue, I'm gonna leave it, but you make a very, very strong logical argument. Touche, sir. Touche. Hmm. All right. I almost feel like I shouldn't even waste time with rendering these rocks here because for the most part, a lot of this is going to be handled in color. Meaning I'm just drawing it multiple times. But this whole toned layer that's underneath may well get cut or turned off when I'm dropping in my final color. So I figure it might be wise for me to just come in here and give it a simple blocking in. All right. Now I will tell you that I am going to draw the background lines in a separate layer because those definitely I want to have those sort of fade out into the background. So I guess right now I'm just trying to go through and say, all right, what are the lines in here that I want to make sure appear in the cleanup. And I can kind of be rough and loose about it because these lines are going to get redrawn. Ah, now that's the thing that I really wanted to. The snakes. That is the question: is how much detail do I want on the snakes? Because in previous pieces I've gotten very detailed with the amount of scales I've done on them. You guys have watched me just paint scales for hours on hours and hours. But I almost feel like this whole piece is so detailed that if anything, maybe the snakes need to be just simple tubes so that they can give the eye a little bit of breathing space and let the eye just sort of move around the finished illustration. In fact, I think this is a stage where I would go through. I do this a lot. I'll just duplicate the layer I'm working on and then keep moving forward, knowing full well that, if for some reason I totally botch what I'm doing here, I can just come back to that other layer, like reverting to a previous version, because the next step here is going to be erasing some parts of some figures so I can draw snakes wrapping around them. For instance, right here, there's a snake that's coming across Apollo's torso. And I have spent so much time trying to draw and redraw him that I don't want to have to work it all out again. So if I draw these snakes and I don't like where they're at, I'm like, all right, I want the flexibility of being able to just come back and reset the drawing, as it were. Now, another move would be to draw these snakes on a separate layer above, but then I would have to mask out or drop back in opacity the parts of the figures that I'm drawing over so they won't be as distracting. And that has its own problems just in the sense of, you know, doing these things at the size of a 16 by 20 print in Procreate, my file size, my layer number is limited. Um, and I actually want to kind of see what this looks like when I have a distracting number of elements around it. Like I need to see what this is going to look like on top of a torso or an arm or a complex area of the drawing that's behind it, so I can decide whether I need to move the snake or simplify the object behind it. Because looking at this right now, I feel like if I just erase these little lines of the abs that are right behind the serpent, it doesn't destroy the sense of the abs and the latissimus, not latissimus, the external oblique muscles. It doesn't destroy those, but it gives me enough sense of the snake itself. I think this guy, I want to have him with his little tongue, little forked tongue out. Have this snake's head crossing over her arm there. See, originally when I drew it, it was just barely kind of touching a little bit crossing over. And that kind of overlap can be a little bit muddy. It's better to go full bore and have it like so it really feels like it's crossing over her arm. The challenge is now doing that, but still making it feel like the snake's head is coming forward, as opposed to a 3/4 angle. And I say that because there's a lot of all of these other snakes are kind of turned to one side or the other. And I always feel like it's good to throw a couple in there that are looking directly at the camera or at the viewer, as it were. And there's not going to be a live stream next week. I'm going to be busy with some family stuff, but I think I'll have at least one or two more before the end of the year. All right. So that's the other thing. There's so much detail here. Like when you look at this whole thing, just putting a mouth in there, like there's no point in drawing any scales on any of these guys. There's no point. I might indicate some scales in the color stage. But as a whole, yeah, it does not need it. And even this, that mouth is up too high. I need to zoom in because I need to see exactly where I'm putting it, but I need to not zoom in so much that I start rendering detail. But I just need to make this mouth a little bit lower. You know what's funny is now looking at it, it reminds me of from Sesame Street. Oscar, for as much of a grouch as he was, he had this little pet, this worm named Smiley, and that is what these snakes are reminding me of. They're reminding me of the Smiley worm. Throw another snake in there, coming around the side. All right. Let me see here. Turn this layer off and take a look underneath. All right, so I've got a serpent that's kind of wrapping around her. Problem being that I've got these very nice clasps, these round clasps that are holding her halter top on, and serpent sort of coming right around them. So I'm going to try and start with the head and work backwards. So we're going to start with the serpent resting on her shoulder. I think I've used that multiple times, and I probably will continue to use it in most pieces. Like as I'm placing serpents around a figure, having one rest on the shoulder seems to be one that always just kind of fits in with the piece somewhere. Like it gives a creepy sense of like, this character is calm, has a snake on their shoulder. I mean, she's got snakes coming out of her head, but just the idea of one calmly resting on one's shoulder. Hmm. I'm trying to see what happens if I can have this cross over her halter top. Have it cross down and then back up again. It seems like it just goes right where that top is. That's what bugs me here is that sometimes you draw something right and it makes things hard. Like that top is right where it needs to be. I don't feel like there's anything in there that's wrong with it, anything that I want to change. So having a snake crossing over that is problematic. Let me try. Let's try something where the snake is doing more of a dip. Down and then back up again. Can I tell you, I just got the craziest idea, which would be to take this detailed piece and then print it out on like 18 by 24, or like just print it out so that I can project it onto 18 by 24 and do a traditional ink drawing of this whole piece. I have a large work on paper in ink. So this feels like it's not destroying so much of what I wanted to capture or what I wanted to hold on to in this top that she's wearing. Just have it sort of this dipping down and then coming back up. Now the last part is the U-turn that needs to happen here on the shoulder, because what needs to happen, do I have it drawn there? It's like, yeah, there's a snake on her shoulder, and yeah, it's coming down her front. But what needs to happen is it needs to come down, then back up, then it needs to go back into space. Hang on, let me draw this differently. It needs to go back into space, hard U-turn, forward into space, and then over onto her shoulder. And right now, it's just sort of like making these turns all sort of on the plane of her chest. It's not going back. So I need to tweak the lines in this region to do that. It's a very small space, and it's having very limited tools to work with, because if I were rendering and doing a bunch of texture in there, I could use the texture to show the changes in direction. But if I'm just using very simple lines and it's a small line, that is hard to make it look convincing. So let's fight that battle. In fact, I'm going to erase the head completely, so I've got a little bit of freedom here to play with this. I was talking to my instructor in the drawing class that I've been taking, and I'm using this piece as an assignment. Like, I was using this piece to work out, like, basically our homework assignments. I figured why not use something that I was going to draw anyway. And I had mentioned to him about the snakes and how the class is on composition, taught by Carl Ganas, who I've mentioned many times. And I had mentioned that in these pieces that I've done in the past, I've found that I really can't place the snakes until I figure out all of the figure work. Because you may get the snakes in this cool visual pattern that I like, and I'm like, oh, this looks cool, this works. And then the minute I have to change it, I'm like, you don't want to change it. But in order to make, like, you guys have seen me spend a lot of time working on all of these figures and getting these figures composed over the past few weeks. Just getting all of this to work has been a Herculean feat. And the idea that you would have to move any of these figures, you'd have to move the snakes just because of adjusting these figures, that seems like you would be very hesitant. Or let me put it this way. I don't know about you guys, but the whole thing is, anything, once you have something working, you loathe the idea of erasing it, destroying it, getting rid of it. And I feel like if you got the snakes just where you wanted it, but then you needed to make a change to the figures, you would really fight making those changes simply because you had something in the piece that was working already. And I know it's the same thing when I'm drawing figures. I tend to do the heads and faces last because the bodies require so much change, and heads are so hard to get right that if you drew the head first, I have found that, my instinct will be that I will resist making changes to it. And a lot of times the changes are, I may have drawn a perfect head, but it's just turned in slightly the wrong direction. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to live within the wrong direction because I'm not redoing all this. Whereas I find that if I do all of the work of the figures multiple first, if I get all of that worked out, then I can just sit there and just redraw the head and redraw the head and redraw the head until I get it right. But it's a lot easier to fix the position of a head on a body that's right than to fix a body onto a head that it's like, if you've got the head right, the body's just not working with it. Fixing the body is usually harder, or at least it looks wonkier. Because honestly, just the way you tilt a torso left and right or twist it, you can very easily get yourself into a spot where now the neck doesn't line up where it should. Okay, so we're getting close here, but this actually looks a little bit awkward. Let me see what happens if I just have the head completely disappear behind. Nah, that doesn't work. What about a nice curve like this? Like it goes down, down, and then back up. Zoom out a little bit. And when in doubt, flip your drawing. Erase this diagram, I don't need it. That was more for just showing you guys what I was thinking directionally. And again, the thing that I said about working out the body first and then the head. So I'm looking at this, and the fact that I'm trying to get what the body is doing, wrapping around her body. It's not a big deal to just get rid of that head and say, all right, everything coming around her neck seems to be working, coming down her torso and then back up and coming over seems to be working. So I can kind of come up to here and say, all right, if everything is working up to here, it's almost like writing the ending of a story. Like, what works for the story of this drawing from here? Letting the head completely disappear behind the shoulder. So let's say I put her shoulder back there. And then maybe having it come around this way. Which is not quite twinning what's happening with this other serpent over here. It's not quite twinning it. It rhymes, and I don't like that. Doing something that's a little bit too close to something I already did in another part of the illustration, but it's not a deal breaker. It's not a deal breaker. And just to let you guys know, we're at an hour here. So I'm going to start winding things down. If you guys have any questions or anything that you wanted me to address or mention or talk about before we wrap up here, now is the time. So I'm going to pretty much bring this session in for a landing. All right, I might have to move that snake head down a little bit farther. See, and the other challenge here is doing something that creates a flow and a rhythm of its own, but also doesn't disrupt the flow of the overall figure. But also, if I move this serpent over just a little too much, it becomes a tangent with the shoulder. So it's that challenge of how to place things just right so that it has the rhythm that I want it to have without creating tangents with other things while also still being recognizable as a separate piece. All right. So I'm going to try and draw this as if this were coming down behind, like literally now I'm going to erase all of that. The point of this line I just put is to say, all right, that's what the serpent's body is doing behind her shoulder. I'm going to erase out a little bit of this so I can find a good place to have it come around on this side. Let's say, all right, this starts to curve back over here. Now, see, the problem I have is I had a band on her shoulder, which now that is going to have to move because it's interfering with the serpent. Or maybe I just switch it to the other shoulder. That's the other thing. It doesn't seem like it's creating a problem on the other side. So maybe what I do is I have this. I like the idea of the serpent perched on her shoulder, but that just does not seem like it's going to work out here. So Hmm. 47 is in the chat. Says it looks like it's coming together. Yeah, I mean, at this stage, it's really just refining the details, fixing things that look wrong in the drawing. This is all about that stage. I often, when I'm at work, I joke with my friends about future Jeremy versus current Jeremy and how what seems to be me being really productive or like knowing things is me just saying, all right, I know the problems that come into later. And what I'm doing now is I'm trying to foresee all of the mistakes that when I'm doing a more detailed value pass, working in the lights and darks, and then actually doing the color, I'm trying to think about all of the things that I'll be doing in color while I'll say, oh, I should have worked this out in the drawing. I'm trying to see those things now, and I'm projecting into the future what it is. I'm like, oh, wait, I'm going to need this worked out before I go to color. I need this worked out before I start changing because I have a value pass in here. Oh, that's the wrong one. Yeah, this is the one. So I have a value pass in this. And mind you, I've moved enough of the drawing around that there's places like up here, Apollo and Ares need to be adjusted. Bits and pieces of Athena need to be adjusted. But overall, for the most part, my value pass still seems to work. But I have a lot of things I'm going to have to go in here and change, move around, adjust, and tweak. I'm trying to get all those things worked out in the drawing so that when I do switch to that pass, it'll be smoother, be more buttery. So and the thing I am trying to decide is whether I want to, at this phase, it really does seem like the serpent wrapping around her arm. This will work, coming around her arm this way. But I am wondering, pardon me, whether I still want to try and get this whole being on her shoulder working, and maybe I can do that by having the serpent come down, and then instead of having it facing outward, to have that serpent head facing inward towards her, like it went up and then just turned around. And to be honest, that might have just solved the problem. That might have done it. And I know I could continue this serpent and just have it coil, like just having that body there coiling across her. But I feel like going back to the original, just the golden band that I put on her upper arm. I feel like visually that is like a good break in the pattern of snakes. Like if I put another snake going around her arm that way, the rhythm that I'm gonna have to work out to get in it might fight with the flowing fabric of the statue that's behind her. And I want something that breaks up the shape of her arm a little bit, but not so much as to be distracting. And that's a really, really fine balance, is breaking a rhythm without being distracting. Or not necessarily breaking up a rhythm, but breaking up a form so that it, like even this, I have to place this bottom line of this band. It's got to be either above that fold or under that fold, one of the two. I can't just have it, creating a tangent. I mean, hell, that was the title of the whole last video, about fighting tangents. So this will help me decide whether I made this band too broad or not. It might be too thick, and I'll have to come in here and thin it down some. So the question is, now it's a repeat of the same issue, is where do I place it so that it does not create a tangent? And putting that band there in the arm also helps reinforce the fact that it's not flat, that it is a cylindrical form. Let's see here. Yeah, 47 says you got to visualize the end result throughout. That is challenging. Yeah, I mean that's the goal. And I find that it's constantly getting lured into the joy of mark making and the rhythm of the whatever it is I'm drawing at that moment, and then having to pull myself back and say, all right, but how does this work with the whole? And it's that constant back and forth between letting yourself get lost and then pulling yourself back. Okay, I think this snake meets all of my serpentine requirements for this piece. Nice and simple. I shouldn't even put nostrils on them. Those are distracting. Just change the plane a little bit. Actually, you know what? I should do that in tone instead of doing that in line, or do that in color. Let that be a shift in color between a darker plane and a lighter plane, as opposed to drawing a line to do it. Because then it won't fight with the overall value, the overall shape of the serpent's body. Okay, so there's going to be a couple more snakes that are going to be near the top of her head. If I turn this sketch off, yeah, I've got like 3, 4 sort of concepted out there. And I just need to figure out of those which ones work. The nice thing, again, the thing I mentioned about needing to work out all of the issues anatomically first, I'm looking at this, and based on the serpent that I have that's going up out of her head, what would look really cool is to have a serpent wrap around the arm that's strumming the lyre. That I think would look good, and then have the head somewhere up in the arm area. That's going to look good. That's going to work. That's one of the reasons why I had to work out all of this anatomy first and then do the snakes. Because in the same way that I have a snake going around Hades' head, it also would, like, to a certain degree, I went into this thinking that I could conceivably have a snake interacting with each of these figures. Like the same way that I've got a snake sitting on Athena's, not on the Medusa's shoulder, the Gorgon's shoulder. I could have another one draping off of the Demeter, the hooded figure. I could have another one draping off of her. Now there's going to be a tipping point where I'm drawing too many snakes and it's just making the thing cluttered. So I'm going to stick with the simple, like 4 more that I see kind of on the top of her head. I'm going to stick with those and then see where I'm at before adding more. Because as you can see from this, the only snakes I really worked out in this very light sketch is there's one on her lower arm, the one around her neck, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's only 8 that I have in here. And in this sketch version already, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, because if I go more than 8 or 10, I run into the same problem I had with Poseidon in the foreground, where there's so much detail. And in fact, I'm looking at this Poseidon and I'm overall happy with it, but I may have to come in and just find a way to simplify his beard a little bit more, because if you shrink this down, detail draws the eye. And I feel like I need to actually have a little bit of a simpler space. I want his hair to feel flowy and rich and fluid, like ocean waves. But I also don't want it to fight with all of the detail that's going on in the rest of the piece. And yes, he's going to be in shadow. Yes, that's going to push him back. But there's a certain level where the detail fights for attention. And the need to simplify him is a desire to calm that. Because just filling every corner of the piece with detail, your eye doesn't have a chance to rest. You got to give the viewer's eye a chance to rest. So otherwise, the piece is just overwhelming, and it's unappealing to have something that just overwhelms the eyes. You want something that draws the eye in, areas of interest, areas of calm, and have the eye flow through an image. 47 says, yes, always more snakes. All right, guys. So that's it for now. If you enjoy these live streams, if you like to get 2 additional bonus live streams per month, and not just an hour long, these are 2.5, 3 hour long. We've got a Discord channel open, so if you actually want to talk, like not just chat, but the talk, we can do that. Just get in, have verbal one-on-one conversations while I'm drawing, while you're drawing, while we're drawing together. If you'd like to be able to read my comic books on an online digital archive, get access to a Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share tips, feedback, art tools, process, just general art shop talk, and more. You can become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI for as little as $2 a month. If you would like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated gifts delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can pick up my most recent comic book series, Morningstar. It's Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains the conclusion, issues 5 through 8. Both have extensive back matter, script excerpts, thumbnails, page layouts, character designs, and more. Basically show you how I put the whole book together. Go check all of those out. Links in the description for all these in the video. If you're watching on Twitch, there will be links in the About tab for the channel. Thank you so much, guys. Always appreciate it. That's it for now. Go be creative.